Look, let's just get right to it today. I'm Brian, this is Watch Complications. Hey everyone, I've sort of decided to do a series of videos that are sort of shorter repair / maintenance videos as I get watches in to do diagnostics on what might be wrong, a minor repair or fix of something. That's sort of the idea here. And so I have this Vario 1918 Trench, beautiful watch. I have a couple of these myself, the stainless steel with the white dial and then the brass medic. So there is a piece of dust, debris, something, right, that's stuck up there against the edge of the case and the crystal inside the case, driving the owner a little nuts, which, hey, I get it, I understand. And so we're gonna get that out of there. These dials are like pristine. You don't want any kind of dust. Sorry, there's a ton of reflection today. It's extremely bright outside, but any of these dust particles you see, like this one here, that's on the outside of the case. Cleaned it up, looked it real good. No dust anywhere else, just this one speck that's up here. And we need to get that out. Now with my videos, I like to do things that are sort of helpful, informational, educational. And this one is really about case construction and design. So there is sort of this normal style of case out there that's just got the case back. Let me show you just for example this. I've got this Seiko sitting around. So we have the case and the case back. That's it, right? The movement sitting inside there, the dial's connected to the movement on the front, that kind of thing. What we have here in this case design is actually three pieces. We have a bezel with the crystal seated inside the bezel that can pop off the front. We have the middle part of the case. It has wired lugs. I think it's why they designed it this way. And then we have the case back. So it's actually three pieces, back, middle, and the front. And I had another case like this sitting around the workshop. And this kind of shows it. I don't have the case back here, but there's a case back that screws into these 6 locations on the back once you've got the movement and dial and everything in there. And then we have the bezel, which pops off the front, and it has the crystal seated inside of the bezel. So this whole thing pops off the front. Then the dial sits around this little ledge, which is a little bit different. It's odd, but some watches are constructed that way. So we have the dial that sits on this side of this ledge, and then the movement is actually going to sit in from the back, and the dial and the movement are connected to each other. But the dial can't just be taken out with the movement, as you've seen on some of my other videos or maybe other watch channels where the movement and dial, everything kind of comes out together from the back. That's not the case here. You have the dial sitting on the front edge and the movement sitting on the back edge, and then the bezel and the crystal are together sitting on the front, as opposed to just a crystal sitting on top. So it's a different type of a case construction, but that's what is going on here with the Vario. So if I want to remove this speck of dust inside of the watch, I don't need to take the case back off and movement out and all of that jazz. I can just take off the bezel, the front, pop it off, and remove the debris, and then put the crystal bezel back on. So this case has a tab. You've seen this on quartz movements before with the case back, right? It's got a little ledge, a little slot where you can get a screwdriver or tool or something and pop off the case back. Similar notion here. You can see at 12 o'clock, there's a little bit of a ledge, a location where you can get a tool inside of there and pop it open. You can see this is probably from factory, but you can tell that there's been a tool in here before. This is the location where you're going to pop off the front, remove the debris, and then we'll just use the case press tool to get the bezel and crystal back on the front securely. So that's what I'm going to do. Now there are lots of different types of tools you could use or attempt to use. People usually don't go with a knife, don't go with something with a sharp edge. That's just never a good idea. But some tools look sort of like this. This is too sharp, and so I'm not going to use it. But tools generally sort of look like this, where you can get it into that location and you have a little bit of leverage. Might need to use a hammer very lightly, sort of to tap it and get it nice and lodged between the bezel and the case so you can actually lift it up. So tools generally look kind of like this. Sometimes the best tool to use might even be a regular kitchen knife. One, because they're not sharp. You stay away from the serrated edge, but you can see from this point to the left, it's actually about the right size. It's smooth, it's not sharp, and tools are generally made in that vein, right? So you can see how thin that is. That gives you the space to get it between the case and the bezel. Whenever there's that little slot right there, you can see it's about the same size as that part of this knife from the kitchen drawer. Now, of course, as a watchmaker, typically not going to use something like this. You're going to have the right tool to use. So not going to use that either. Sometimes, you know, you find the right size screwdriver might be useful. Sometimes I'll take a screwdriver like this and I'll file it down so it's smoother corners, but it's got enough thinness / thickness to it so that it fits well in these particular locations. So that, I mean, there's lots of ways that people go about doing this. Depending on the maker, the size, you know, the brand, they're going to vary a little bit, but you know, there's some tools that will be specifically designed for these sort of situations. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pry this open, and then I'm going to use probably some Radico. We'll lift that little piece of debris out, and then we'll put it back together. So before I get started on this, let me show you up close what this looks like. You can see the tab there, right? Sometimes, whether it's a case back or bezel, you know, if this gets worked on a lot or people aren't careful, you might see some sort of, you know, minor scratches or, you know, scuffs here and there. But when that's on your wrist, not really noticing it because it's hidden up there at 12 o'clock. And by the way, depending on the brand, you know, it takes a lot of QA, you know, quality control, quality assurance to make sure that the watch is going out the door from a factory. Don't have these sort of issues, but you know, it's just a matter of numbers. Some of them are going to have issues kind of like that. So it is what it is. But that's why, I don't know, people like me are around to make repairs or fix things as needed. To be honest, the hardest part about this minor situation is not getting that speck of dust out. It's not letting any dust back in while the case is open. That's a lot harder task than taking the dust out. Let me throw in a tip here as well. Always use some sort of plastic between the case and the tool. And you can buy special types of material, plastic or whatnot, but sometimes people use tape. But I usually put some sort of thicker, sort of bag style plastic between the case and the tool that helps keep down marks or scratches, scuffs, that sort of thing. So make sure you do that if you're taking off case backs or bezels like this, anything. Put something protective between the tool and the case. To sort of summarize the process, because I like to give all of the detail on my channel. I don't like to skip, you know, on the how to do something. Is I've got the plastic between the case and the tool, and this will take just maybe one tap very lightly. Don't hit it hard. Let's say with a small hammer on the end of the tool, and depending on what tool you're using, just make sure it's appropriately sized for the gap on the case, and then adjust the plastic. Maybe one more tap again. This one only took 2 little taps, and then I had enough leverage between the case and the bezel that I can start to lift it up as I go around the case. Doesn't take much usually on this sort of case design. That's why you see these different marks. And then what I'll do is I'll go around and I use one spot on the plastic for every action. So that's why you see a few different locations here where you can see that the screwdriver, the tool, has been, because I'll do a little lift and then find for me that location is done, because I just don't want to go through both layers of the plastic and scratch the case. And so I'll go around and around and around and just slowly lift it out. No need to put intense pressure on one location. Take your time, you know, work around the case. And you can see now there's the gap the whole way around. I'm leaving it on at the moment because, like I said, I want to basically take this thing off quickly, get that little speck out, and get the thing back on as quick as possible. If it was in a particular location, like here the gap is at 12, just make sure that you apply the bezel and crystal back sort of in that same location. I mean, it could be anywhere, but it's going to be hidden the most, look the best when it's at this particular location because of this case design. I'll also make note of conditioning things of parts as I take the watch apart, so that I know, and whoever sent it to me knows, here's the condition it arrived to me in, here's the work I did, and here's what it's coming back to you as. I'm just going to lift the bezel and crystal off, get that little speck out, and then boom, right back on. I don't want to muck around. I don't want to leave it open. All right, so I got my Rodico ready to go. Use my toothpick real quick. Pop this open. Get that little debris out and back on. Just so you can see what I'm doing here, twisting this a little bit, getting it lined up correctly where that slot's right there at 12 again. See it there. So what I'll do is I'll give this a little bit of a sort of a finger press, kind of get it seated down again a little bit. That way I can clean it and not worry about the bezel and crystal rotating on me at all. Clean it up real good, and then I'll look at it real close, make sure nothing else is inside the case. Okay, looks perfect. All fixed. And if you can see it here, let me zoom in here. And you can see right here on the tip of the Rodico there is that little speck of dust that was on the inside of that case. Would have annoyed me too. Now I've zoomed out quite a bit. I'm not gonna be able to show this as well, but I've got my case press here. I've got a flat back on the bottom, which matches well to the underneath of the case size. And then on the top, I've got it, you can see the recess there. This sort of angles, curves down on the inside edge. It's sort of fit for this size on the bezel crystal so that it's right around the edge, not around the sides, but just around right at the edge. So that which is the best spot in this case to then put the pressure and press this thing back down. And whenever I put a case on the case press, again, use plastic or other things, I'm going to use a microfiber cloth, and so I'll set that underneath, and I'll set the watch down, and then I'll put the microfiber cloth on the top and do a press that way, just so there's some, again, protection between the case and the tool. And as you heard when I press that down, here's a snap. We know it's secure again and good to go. And now with the bezel securely fastened, double check, double take, right? Let's make sure that it is indeed all squared away. The Magnification headset I'm using, I've reviewed before. Find the link below, and I'll link the review video for it. I don't see any other debris inside the case. Of course, I'm human. Everyone's human. I can miss something. So many ways that light picks up different things inside of a watch case. Always the potential for a little speck of dust or debris. A lot of times, whenever a watch goes through QC, it doesn't look bad. It looks fine. Everything looks okay. And then there may be a piece of dust or debris somewhere around an edge of the case, or that works its way from, around the dial, sort of meets the bezel. There's a little bit of a crack there. Maybe it's on the back side, but with this shaking or movement, maybe it gets worked free and then ends up on the dial side. All kinds of little weird things like that can happen. Getting something dust-free is a tall order. And, the light on that black, man, that shows everything. But this thing looks pristine now. So, I hope you got something out of this video. Maybe new case design you hadn't seen before, where you've got the bezel crystal, you can pop it off the front, tips around how to do that. Of course, Rodico, always your friend in terms of cleaning up oil, debris, that kind of stuff. And hope you got something out of it. I'm Brian, it's Watch Complications. I'm out.